Hi everyone, this is Sudeshna from the Abundant Psyche, and you are listening to the Not So Corporate podcast. Here we talk about all of the not so corporate things that we corporate entrepreneurs do within and outside our corporate lives. And today I have with me Nicola. Nicola is brilliant, and Nicola and me connected a few days back due to her coaching cards. But I don't want to steal the thunder away from the story, but just to give you a sense of who she is, she's a former business change consultant, worked with Accenture and KPMG and EY, and she now works with female professionals looking to make a change in their career, helping them annihilate the self-doubt and the fear of judgment so that they have the confidence to carve out a career that fulfills their passion and allows them to showcase their talents. She's a certified mindset coach, NLP coach, timeline therapy, hypnosis practitioner, mindfulness teacher. She is also qualified in the British Psychological Society's levels A and B. And she's also a mental health first aider and a coach trainer for the Mindset Coach Academy. Welcome, Nicola. So glad to have you.
Thank you so much.
You are incredibly talented. You have done all of the things that I'm interested in. Well, I have scratched the surface of NLP a bit. Well, mindfulness meditation, that's my jam as well. But other than that, I am really, really curious to find out more about you, actually more about the coaching and the affirmation card. Tell us, how did you get into that world of consulting, and then what made you leave?
So, when I was at university, well, first of all, before that, when I was leaving school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So, I went to university and did a degree in international business and modern languages. And the reason that I did a degree in international business and modern languages is that everybody was saying to me, this will give you a really broad base. You don't have to specialize in anything. If you don't know what you want to do, it will give you a really good foundation and you'll be able to go on from there and get a job. I got to the end of 5 years at university because in Scotland, if you study a language, your course is actually 5 years long, which a lot of people are quite surprised by for an undergraduate. But I got to the end of my 5 years, or approaching the end, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. And so I started to look into management consultancy because, again, it was going to give me those options. I didn't have to specialize in anything. And again, it was going to give me a really good grounding. So I got onto the graduate program at Accenture. Over the next few years, built up my skills there, became very interested in human performance and business change consulting. Effectively worked my way through the graduate program there and then into the consulting ranks up to manager level. And while I really enjoyed the people that I was working with, I knew that I wanted to do more of the human performance and business change work. And at the time, and this was quite some time ago, at the time, there wasn't a massive amount of that available within Accenture. And so I made the move over to KPMG on the basis that that was the work that I was interested in and wanted to do and would have the opportunity to do more of. And then interestingly, spent time in the consulting area of KPMG, but they were growing very, very rapidly. And I actually got the opportunity to become the chief operating officer within their government advisory unit, which at the time was a very small unit. So there were 50 people in government advisory when I took on the chief operating officer role. And over the course of the next 12 months, we scaled to 250 people. So we had really rapid growth. But what was required there was getting processes and infrastructure in place to help the consulting arm grow and grow rapidly. And because of all the experience that I had at Accenture, and for anybody who has not worked for Accenture or been close to Accenture, it is a well-oiled machine. The systems and processes and methodologies are as slick as you will find anywhere in the world. And so I was able to use my experience and my exposure to those methodologies and help the KPMG government advisory practice set themselves up in a similar capacity. And so I did that for a couple of years. I then knew that I wanted to make a move into management development and talent development. And the opportunity wasn't quite there for me at KPMG at that point in time, doing the work that I wanted to do. And that was when I moved over to Ernst & Young, and ironically was in talent development for about a year, at which point there was lots of change going on, and ended up back in a consulting role, an internal consulting role there, where again, I was just able to use all of the skills that I'd amassed over the time that I'd been within consulting. And then I got to the point at Ernst & Young where I had gone off on maternity leave, never quite sure if I was going back or not, because I'd always had this hankering to do my own thing. Went off on maternity leave, came back and had the conversation about, right, what role will I be taking on? And I would have been going back into the internal consulting team where there was still a lot of travel required. And I had a 9-month-old baby, a husband who worked full time. We didn't live close to any family. And we had to make some really difficult decisions about the type of family life that we wanted to have and the type of upbringing that we wanted our children to have. And it was at that point that, in the end, it was actually a very easy decision for me to make, because I knew that at some point I wanted to do my own thing anyway, that it was the right time for me to exit consulting at that point in time.
That's so interesting that you say that consulting gives you the broad base of exit options. Is that one of the reasons that you went into consulting, Nicola? And did you find that to be true?
So as I spent time, so I went into consulting wanting to have this really broad experience. And then I became very interested in human performance, people development, and wanted to hone my career in that direction. Interestingly, what I found when I then left consulting is that I had so many options available to me that it then became really difficult to decide. So it was kind of, right, what path am I actually going to go down? And I've got a really clear memory of sitting on Tooting Common with my daughter, who was 9-10 months old, and she was playing around in a blanket, and I sat down. In fact, I've probably still got it somewhere. I sat down with a notebook and brainstormed all the things that I potentially could do, and it went on for pages and pages and pages. And actually, quite a large part of those first few months was trying to figure out, what the heck do I do next? And you know, it's a nice position to be in. However, it is that whole piece of, right, where am I actually going to specialise? And at the time, I had very clearly in my head that I had to get the answer right. So if I was to approach the same situation now, I would do it very, very differently. But at the time, I thought I was picking the thing that I was going to do for the next 20 years of my life. And actually, I now know that that is not how the world works, and that's not how entrepreneurship and solopreneurship works. But at the time, I was very fixated on getting the right answer.
That is so funny. And this is what I hear all the time from people I work with, my peers, my friends, my colleagues, is that consultants typically have the opposite problem from the rest of the folks, because you have the problem of choice. The rest of the
Yeah.
folks are struggling to find a job, maybe in a difficult economy, but consultants have quite the opposite problem. Too many options. What do I choose? So, how did you make that choice, Nicola?
I almost fell into it. So my first stab at entrepreneurship was creating an agency called Life After Maternity Leave. So I was going through this whole process of, oh my God, what do I do after my maternity leave? And I was having conversations with so many people at the time that I then set up this consulting service whereby people could come to me and we could thrash out what their options were. And there was an online platform. Bear in mind, this was back in 2009. So the world has moved on in many, many ways since then. But this was about consolidating the information that was out there to help people make decisions and help people to decide what was right for them. And that operated for about 3.5, 4 years. And then that led me on to the next part of my journey, because again, you start to learn that you don't want to do things forever. And I had learned a whole heap of things about setting up a business, setting up an online presence, becoming visible on social media. And from there, I actually created something called the Mums Business Academy. So it kind of followed through from life after maternity leave. A lot of people decided to go back to the role that they were in. Some people decided to completely devote themselves and be at home with their children. Some people decided to set up their own business. And that was the crowd that the Mums Business Academy was catering to. It was an online course to help people from start to finish of like that very first moment of what are my ideas? How do I get that idea from idea to an actual viable business that is running? And again, I did that for probably about 2.5, 3 years, at the same time running face-to-face networking groups for people in my local area and around that had children, that were working around children, and created networking for them so that they could build up. And it was really important at the time when you've got young children, if there's anybody listening with young children who is also growing and developing a business, it's really important that you've got your network around you and your people around you, and people around you that understand the challenges that you're facing. And that was what we created through those networking groups. And so there was the networking group, which was a local piece, and then the Mums Business Academy, which was online.
That is so interesting, and I love how you connected the dots backwards almost. You say that very well, like picking up on the breadcrumbs.
Yeah. So follow the breadcrumbs. And at the time, so this is something that I talk about with clients now. At the time, I didn't know that's what I was doing. It felt really clunky and uncomfortable. And I used to get frustrated with myself because I would say, well, why can't I just stick with one thing? I'd get to the point of being, I've done that. And this is probably the consultant in me, because it's very difficult for a consultant to then go into a functional role and be happy in a functional role where they are doing the same thing day in, day out, month in, month out. I have a friend who's a management accountant, and she can map out the next 10 years of her life based on her month ends. She knows when her month ends are going to fall. She knows when her year end will fall. She knows her peaks. She knows her troughs. That is not for me at all. I like the variety. I like mixing it up. And so I have now recognized in myself that much the way you are as a consultant, where you work on a project by project basis, that my business is going to be cyclical, that I will always be evolving and changing and growing and developing and moving on to the next thing. And I used to give myself a hard time about it because I was thinking, why can't I just stick with one thing? But actually, I've now come to accept that's okay, because there's a common thread that runs through all the work that I've ever done, and that is around human performance and people development. And so in a corporate context, that was very much around, I guess, organizational development and development of teams and on a larger scale. And now it's much more about personal transformation.
That is so true, that management consultants, because of the variety that we are used to, because of the short and snappy projects that we are used to, the implementation or the functional, deeply functional roles. I mean, there will be, look, there will be some consultants out there who really enjoy that deep expertise, and I myself like to go very deep on certain things, but equally, as long as I have the variety within those certain things, as long as
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
the variety of problems. So I completely hear you in that. And it's also very interesting to me that you said that you are okay with your business changing and evolving, and you are a solopreneur, and you don't, we were having a chat just before, and you mentioned that you don't want this to be anything bigger in the next couple of years. And
no,
that's a conscious decision. When I tend to talk to consultants, quite a lot of times people have aspirations of starting their own venture backed startup, which is great, which is, I mean, if you are passionate about that, that's great. And if you want to go ahead and see a startup through, make it a unicorn and whatnot, that's great. But I think there are quite a lot of folks out there who are entrepreneurial but are not quite sure about what is it that they could do other than their corporate
yeah,
job. If they, and everyone's waiting for this crazy idea to strike, once I have an idea about what to set up a business with, I will set it up. And what you said is quite different and quite refreshing to hear. So, did you always know that you wanted to be a solopreneur? More
No,
so.
no, 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 no. This has been a long and winding road, and quite at times quite a painful road as well, because other people have expectations of you. So other people have expectations of your education, your background, your position, the things that you could potentially do. And actually, it's probably worth talking about where my work evolved after the Mums Business Academy, because I genuinely believe you teach what you need to learn. And so at each phase of this journey, I have been teaching other people what I have needed to learn myself. And so moving on from the Mums Business Academy, my business kind of morphed into, it was more general mentoring rather than specific to business. And the banner for all that was called A Good Life Well Lived. And I still do a lot of work around a good life well lived. So a good life well lived to me is about living a life where you are completely and unashamedly living in line with your values and placing your time, energy, and attention where you want it to go. Not where other people think it should go, but where you want it to go. Where I have become very clear is that I want the bulk of my time, energy, and attention to go towards my family until they are of an age that they are fully self-sufficient. And when I say fully self-sufficient, I'm talking kind of like 16. You know, they're by the time they get to college age. And so my children are now 11 and 9. So we're quite far through that process. But I want to make sure that my work fits around my family and my family life. And it has taken me a really long time to own that decision, because it always felt like it was a bit of a cop out, that actually I should be doing all of these other things that people thought and were expecting me to do. But actually, what's really important for me now is that interests me and that allows me to develop my skills and also allows me to bring in an income as well. And to be able to do that, for me, that means being a solopreneur and not looking at setting up a business where I would be responsible for other people's salaries. I mean, ultimately, that is not a responsibility that I want to have at this point in time. And that's not to say that I won't want it in the future, but that complete self-sufficiency is something that's very important to me at the moment.
Such a fresh perspective, Nicola. Can I just ask, when you say people had expectations or people in general have expectations, who are these people?
Honestly, family, friends. So, like, I have, whole way through school, I was top of my year at school. I went to university. I've got a first class degree. I was top of my year at university. I was accepted onto the Accenture graduate program, which I don't even know what the stats are, but lots of people apply for the Accenture graduate program, or they certainly did back in 2000 when I started. Lots of people apply, they aren't successful. I got onto that program. I was then able to move between organizations within the Big Four, and I took the decision to walk away from all of that. I took the decision to walk away from a stable paycheck, which, quite frankly, for my family, or when I say my family, I mean my parents, was very difficult for them to understand. Why would you do that? But I had to be true to the way that I wanted my family life to be. And so, to be completely honest, when my children were very young, I felt as though I wasn't good enough because I wasn't juggling all the balls, and that I wasn't, and I'll give you an example. So back in 2012, I had, my daughter was just under 3 and my son was about 5, 6 months old, and the Olympics came to London. And quite a few of the people that I had worked with at Accenture had actually joined the London 2012 team. And I remember just feeling, oh my God, here I am. What am I doing? I am spooning baby mush into mouths and wiping bottoms, and they're out there making the London 2012 Olympics happen. And, you know, I felt very much less than at that point in time. And it was only probably in the 6 months after that that I could really reflect about the direct impact that I was having by being there. I'm still effectively on maternity leave at this point, but the direct impact that I was having on my kids. And I knew that that was something that was important to us at that point in time. And that maybe, well, definitely the London 2012 opportunity was not the right one for me at that time. But there were plenty of opportunities out in the world that I could go for. But I was only going to get one shot at seeing those little people when they were little, and being the one to help guide, grow, and develop them. And let's be clear, that's no easy job, and it's not often. Bits of it are fun. Lots of it is fun, but when they're very little, I mean, that was a very, very difficult time. And so when I talk about teaching what you need to learn, I then published a book called Staying Home with the Kids, which was all about my experience of being a stay-at-home mum during that period of my life, and offering advice to other people about how they could make that decision for themselves, if that was right for them, but also to give them some validation, because so many people will say, why are you giving everything up to do that? You can get a nanny, you can pay somebody to do that, and you absolutely can. But you need to make the choice that's right for you. And it's not the right choice for everyone, but at that point in time, it was the right choice for us. And so that's when they were very little. And then my work ramped up again as they get into nursery and primary school, etc.
I have a 1.5-year-old as well, so been through that journey very recently. So it's definitely not an easy job. So many women, I don't want to say give up their careers, because there's no giving up in there. You can always come back. In fact, you are coming back probably is more credible than you were before, because you have that ruthless prioritization now
Yeah.
added to your list of skills. But
And the thing that is great now, which definitely wasn't around, I don't know, 5, 7 years ago, there are so many of large organizations, and I'm guessing the big four. In fact, I know for sure that Accenture does this, where they have returner programs. So people that have taken time off to be with their kids, the structured program to help them return back into the workplace, which is just fantastic. I think we've come such a long way in the last 10 years, and this is something that we really need to celebrate.
definitely, when I was with Strategy and PwC, there was a return to work policies. I definitely think that it's come a long way. But sometimes I so hear you in that, because all of the folks that generally happen to be in my audience, in my circle, they are very, very high achieving. And when they hit that point of family or job, it's almost a choice, and you are almost made to feel a bit bad, because you are educated, you are empowered, you are,
Yeah, yeah.
and why would you do that? You need to be this role model for other women coming after you. And I feel like that's such a huge burden to carry as women as well.
It is, and it has to be a decision about what's right for the individual. But I sometimes flip it the other way. So you are so educated, you are so capable. Wouldn't you want that to be the person that your children are around all the time?
That is such a different perspective on it.
Yeah, because why? Well, and again, it's about choices, but I could choose to pay somebody to be with my child all day, but actually, maybe I would rather they were just with me. Now, the reality of that sometimes would drive me crazy. And I have to admit that when they both started school and I had proper time to focus on my projects and my career, I was a much happier person, or a much more balanced person. Because when I think back on it now, I was getting up and working like from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. before they got up in the morning. And then we'd have time together and they'd go to nursery or whatever it was that they would do. And I'd have pockets of time. So for them to start school and actually have proper time to devote. And that time has only increased over the years. And so I've been able to flex my work around that.
So you mentioned about the feeling of self-doubt and the feeling of not being enough. Is that where your coaching cards came from? They are called You Are Enough.
Yeah. So again, if I track you a little further back in the story and then I'll bring you up to date. So I established the Good Life Well Lived, which effectively, to begin with, was a podcast. And it was a podcast that I set up to allow me to network with interesting people. Very similar to what you're doing here, where I would be able to have conversations with interesting people that I would then record and that I'd be able to share with the world. In that time, I'd done some mindfulness training. I was running mindfulness classes. I then became very interested in mindset and how to take work around feeling like you have the capability and the courage to follow through on what your good life well lived looks like for you. And I did a mindset coaching certification and have subsequently become one of their coach trainers, where I support new coaches coming through the program. And there is one therapy that we use called timeline therapy. In the first phase, we get to the heart of what are the limiting decisions and the negative emotions that hold people back. And then we use timeline therapy to eliminate those emotions and decisions. As I work with people on that, so often when you track back to the root issue, it is that people don't believe that they are enough. And that shows up in lots of different ways for people. So it could be, I can't go for that promotion because I'm not experienced enough. I can't be visible in my business because I can't show my face on social media, or I can't do video on social media. And so when you actually dig down and explore further, well, what does that actually mean? And what do you actually believe about yourself? More often than not, when we track it back, the belief that they hold is that they are not enough just as they are. And so I wanted to create something that was going to be thought-provoking and inspiring, and get people really to think about this idea that they were holding of themselves, that they weren't enough. And so I've created these 52 coaching cards, which have a message on one side, kind of affirmation on one side, and on the flip side, there's a lot more detail, and there are some little exercises or prompts or things that people can do to help them embed the belief that actually they are enough just as they are. And so now the story behind this is, it was actually supposed to be a book. And what was going to happen is that there would be a book and that there would be coaching cards that would go along with the book. However, we got to back end of 2020, and I was starting to plan ahead for 2021 and what that was going to look like, and how I was going to write this, how I was going to find the time to write this book. And it became very clear that in the UK, that the pandemic was going in such a direction that children were going to be off school again. And I'm thinking to myself, I cannot continue with my client commitments and write a book at the same time. So how is this going to work? What do I do? And then I was like, right, okay, why don't we flip it? I can do the coaching cards and the book can come after. And so that was my reasoning behind it. So I created the coaching cards, which launched in early April 2021, they're beautifully designed, really bright, really happy, that people can access and use. And then the creation of the book will continue throughout the course of this year, because actually, with hindsight, getting the feedback from people around the coaching cards and how they're using them is going to allow me to create a better book. And it's going to allow me to create something that is going to meet the needs of my audience in a much more effective way.
Love that. And I was really interested in the coaching cards because of the affirmations piece. And I know you are trained in NLP as well. And I tend to talk quite a lot about affirmations because I honestly live by them. Using affirmations changed quite a few of my beliefs,
Yep.
worked around quite a few of my beliefs. And at the end of the day, everything is a belief, whether we like to admit it or not. Have you come across this set of cards or affirmations being called too woo woo, and how do you work around that?
So I've had to own my woo-woo. I went for a very long time saying, I'm not really into this stuff. However, I have tried EFT, or I'm not really into this stuff, but I've just had homeopathy, or, and then a couple of years ago, I had to kind of hold my hands up and go, actually, maybe I do believe in quite a lot of what people call woo-woo. I now feel confident enough in myself that if anybody challenges that in any way, then I can just say, yeah, that's fine. If you want to call it woo-woo, that's absolutely fine. But I know that this works and I have evidence that this works. So that's all that's important to me. And I think your point about affirmations is a really interesting one. So when people think about mindset work, more often than not, they'll think about journaling and affirmations and meditation. And all of these things are great. More often than not, they do not work in isolation. So if you have the affirmation that I am enough, and you think that saying that to yourself 10 times in a day is going to make you believe that you're enough, then unfortunately you're just kidding yourself. So the way I see things like affirmations and journaling is almost if you imagine brickwork, where you've got the bricks and then you've got the cement to hold it together. For me, when I'm working with a client, we work on the bricks. We work at a conscious level, at an unconscious level, on the actual bricks. But it's things like the affirmations and the journaling that are the cement that hold it together. It's the follow-up piece. It's the additional piece to really solidify what's there already. But it's so important that you work on the bricks as well. So if you are struggling to feel that you are enough, telling yourself 10 times in the morning while you look in the mirror brushing your teeth that I am enough ain't going to cut it. You've got to dig deep. You've got to understand, where is that belief coming from? Why is that holding you back? How can you let it go? And then use the other things to support you, to strengthen that belief that you have.
That is so interesting that you say that, because I have a regular meditation practice, and since I think I've picked up meditation, I feel like some of my neural pathways have loosened. That's one of the things that I think is well documented scientifically as well. Meditation helps you unravel your neural net within
Yeah,
your head.
absolutely. Absolutely. And there is scientific evidence to back that up. And the way I talk about meditation, and in particular mindful meditation, because that is the type of meditation that I use. The whole point of meditation is not to make you feel relaxed or to calm you. It's about helping you learn how to take control of your thoughts. And so meditation is a tool that you can use to help you learn how to take control of your thoughts. So when you're doing mindful meditation, the goal is not to empty your head or not to have any thoughts. The goal is to be able to direct your thoughts where you want them to go. And so the way that I talk to people about meditation is, it's a bit like if your child was going to learn how to ride a bike, you wouldn't send it off down a busy main road. You would make sure that you took the child to the park and you put a helmet on and you put elbow pads on and knee pads, and you might have stabilizers to start with, and you'd hold the back of the bike, and then slowly but surely you'd let the bike go. So meditation, in terms of taking control of your thoughts, meditation is you as the child at the park with all of this support in place to help you train your thoughts where you want it to go. And so that for me is the best way of kind of holding in your head what meditation is all about. And the process of meditation has been scientifically proven to change the neural pathways within your head, so that when you are out in the real world and a situation arises, you're not going to say, oh, sorry, excuse me, I need to wait 1 minute, I need to go and meditate for 5 minutes. But actually, you are going to be able to take control of your thoughts, take control of your behavior. And that is the impact that meditation can have on day-to-day life.
Yeah, and from time to time when I meditate, I do feel like, something's shifted, something's different. And that is also, I suppose, when the power of affirmations come in. So I quite like your analogy about layering affirmations and journaling and
Yeah.
meditation. So, Nicola, in terms of not so corporate things that you have done quite a lot of not so corporate things. But if you could recommend one thing that has helped you in your career, in your life, that you did not really pick up from the corporate world, what would that be?
So I think definitely my answer to this would be following my intuition. So in the corporate world, you're very much conditioned to have a rational response, to assess all of the options that are available to you and make a decision based on that data. And actually, what I have learned and what I have experienced since leaving corporate, and it took me a long time to get there, but what I now know is that tuning in to, I call it my inner knowing. It's that voice inside my head, it's that feeling inside my body about what is the right thing to do, and it's what is the right next step, and just tuning in and listening to, right, what is the next right step for me, and then trusting when you get that response back, whether it's a feeling in your body, whether it's a thought in your head, it's trusting that and going with it rather than bouncing back to the logic and the rational side of the brain. It's about feeling into things, and just having, and the only way I can describe it is having that knowing.
I think quite a lot of us wonder whether at times it's intuition or if it's us, if I can use the word, chickening out of a situation,
Yeah,
giving
yeah, yeah,
ourselves excuses,
yeah.
and so on. So, how do you know that it's not another excuse that you are giving to yourself for not doing something that you are really terrified of doing versus something that you really don't want to do or probably you are not meant to do?
Yep. And that is an excellent question. And I think the answer I'm going to give you is very unsatisfactory, but it's just that you know. um, and once you, and I remember asking a friend this question as well, probably about 10 years ago. I'm like, but how do I know? And it's getting to a point of trusting yourself enough that when you know, you know. And so trusting yourself really involves tuning into yourself. And tuning into yourself means taking time to be still, to be quiet, to do that meditation if that's your thing. Some people don't enjoy meditation, but they might enjoy going for a run, or they might enjoy going for a walk, or they might enjoy going for a swim. Like whatever meditation means for you, spend more time doing that. So I can't remember the exact wording of it. There's a quote from Confucius, which is, if you don't have time to meditate for 20 minutes a day, then you need to do it for an hour. So, it's basically, if you think you've not got the time, you need to do as much of it as you possibly can, because you need to find the time to do it. And so I'm not advocating that everybody sits down cross-legged and meditates for hours every day, but you do need to spend that quiet time alone in whatever form makes sense for you, and just allow yourself to get quiet, get comfortable with yourself, and just listen to what is coming through for you. And that doesn't happen overnight, that takes practice. But once you start to do that, and the way that I describe it to clients is it's about having inner confidence. So confidence doesn't necessarily have to be really showy and standing up in front of 500 people and giving a presentation. Inner confidence is about trusting and knowing that you are doing the right thing for you. And developing that inner confidence is so powerful that it changes everything. And you get that inner confidence when you can tune in to your intuition, to your knowing, and you just instinctively know when you're on the right path.
That is so powerful, and I completely agree. And about Confucius's sayings, I think that's come up the second time in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, really?
It's probably a sign for me to look into.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And after I said that, I thought, was it Confucius? But there is a very famous quote somewhere, which is all about basically, if you think you've not got time to meditate, then you really need to make the time, and more time than you think you did. But my spin on that is, for people listening that hear the word meditation and go, oh, that's not for me. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Try it and see what happens. Try it with no expectation of yourself and see what happens. But equally, if that doesn't work, find something. Gardening, walking, fishing, whatever the thing is that's going to allow you quiet time with yourself, find that and make sure that you're building that into your day.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I will take that one step more and say that There are literally hundreds and hundreds of ways of meditation. If one doesn't work, don't give up on meditation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There are hundreds of ways. And if any of you listening are in London and are interested, drop me a email or a DM or something. I probably can connect you to quite a few interesting meditation groups of interesting teachers as well. No cost, no subscription, no nothing. So
And there are a couple of good resources. There's the Insight Timer app, which it used to be that everything was free. I think some of them are now paid for, but there are literally thousands of meditations on there. And I have a few downloads on my website if people want to find them from me, where I've got just 5-minute breathing spaces, 10-minute breathing space. And I actually have a meditation that's called You Are Enough, which weaves in a lot of the affirmations that are in the You Are Enough cards.
yeah, brilliant. I will link all of that down below in the description box of wherever you're listening to this. It's been so great chatting with you, Nicola. It was really a treat. And for any of you who have been listening all this while, let us know what you thought in the comments. Leave us a review, like, subscribe, and we'll see you the next time. Bye.
Bye.